Welcome back to the world today. A suicide bomber has struck in the Afghan capital, Kabul, killing at least 6 police officers just outside the Interior Ministry. A ministry spokesperson said the attacker had tried to get inside the building wearing a military uniform. The Taliban has claimed responsibility for the deadly blast. There have been frequent attacks in Afghanistan in recent days in the run-up to Saturday's presidential elections. Now, in a separate development, suspected Taliban gunmen in northern Afghanistan reportedly killed 9 people, including a candidate running for one of the country's provincial councils. The attack came just hours after Taliban militants repeated a warning to Afghans to stay away from the vote. The militants described the election as a sham backed by the West and have threatened to disrupt it. Well, Thailand has experienced a horrible blast from the past as a suspected World War II bomb has exploded in the capital, Bangkok, killing at least 7 people. Construction workers found the bomb in a scrap metal warehouse and sold it, believing it was inactive. Warehouse workers then used a blowtorch to take the bomb apart and detonated it in the process. The massive blast destroyed the shop and created a large crater. It almost damaged nearby houses and started a large fire. Thai police say that 5 people died at the scene. We're still in Asia. China has condemned an environmental protest in Maoming, Guangdong province that turned violent, calling it serious criminal behavior. And one Sunday, residents protested against the construction of a petrochemical plant that manufactures paraxylene. But the protest turned violent when reports of several injured protesters came on the news. On Tuesday, the protest spread to Guangzhou province. Those protests, of course, are very rare in China, where it is illegal to protest without a permit. We're in Ukraine now. NATO says it is no longer business as usual with Russia, as the organization's foreign ministers have agreed to suspend all practical civilian and military cooperation with Moscow. And this is due to the country's annexation of Ukraine's Crimea region. And NATO Secretary General Anders Fogh Rasmussen says Russia's action is the gravest threat to European security for a generation. He had earlier categorically denied reports that Russia was pulling its forces back from its border with Ukraine. Moscow is believed to have assembled tens of thousands of troops on Ukraine's eastern border in recent days, causing alarm in Kiev and the West. In a related development, the U.S. House of Representatives voted overwhelmingly to back a bill providing aid to Ukraine and imposing certain sanctions against Russia over the annexation. The bill is due to go to President Barack Obama for his signature. But in a recent development also, just today, Ukraine's former president, Viktor Yanukovych, described Russia's annexation of Crimea as a tragedy, hoping it will once again become part of Ukraine. He said this in an interview with some international media. Mr. Yanukovych denied giving orders to security forces to open fire on protesters in Kiev weeks ago when the protests were really heavy. He has promised to try to persuade Russian President Vladimir Putin to return Crimea to Ukraine. Over in France, Ségolène Royal, the former partner of French President François Hollande, has been appointed as the new environment minister. This comes after a major reshuffle by the ruling socialists headed by new Prime Minister Manuel Valls. Mr. Valls was appointed to the job after the socialists suffered a humiliating defeat at local elections. The finance minister, Pierre Moscovici, has left the government with his job now split between 2 ministers. Michel Sapin takes charge of finance, while Arnaud Montebourg will be in charge of industry and economy. Meanwhile, it was widely speculated that Mr. Hollande's most recent official partner, Valérie Trierweiler, had opposed Ms. Royal's appointment to any position in the government. Mr. Hollande and Ms. Trierweiler officially split up in January after it emerged that he had been having an affair with an actress. The return of Ms. Royal, the mother of Mr. Hollande's 4 children, to government follows a long period when she was out of the political spotlight. She was the socialist candidate in the 2007 election that saw President Nicolas Sarkozy clinch the vote. Well, here in Nigeria, the country has been listed among the world's extremely poor countries. That's according to the World Bank Group President Jim Yong Kim at the Council of Foreign Relations in Washington, D.C., United States. Others making that list are India, China, Bangladesh, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Pakistan, Tanzania, Ethiopia, and Kenya. Well, this new study, this report, puts the total number of the extreme poor at about 80%, and that's 2/3 of the world's population. And Mr. Jim adds that the bank has a series of measures that meet the evolving needs of countries. They include a $100 billion increase in the lending capacity to $300 billion over the next 10 years. Annual lending to middle-income countries will also increase from $15 billion to almost $28 billion. He expects the World Bank's annual commitments, which today is around $50 billion, to grow more than $70 billion in the coming years. Well, moving north of Africa now, a twin bomb explosion has rocked the Egyptian capital, Cairo, killing a police brigadier general near the State University. 5 others were also injured in the attack. Officials say the explosives were planted near a police post. No group has yet claimed responsibility for this attack, but Egypt has witnessed several attacks against government targets by militant groups following the ousting of the Muslim Brotherhood in July. Media reports gave the name of the dead officer as Tariq al-Mijawi, the head of Giza's investigations department. Explosions happened outside the Faculty of Engineering at Cairo University. We turn to some more interesting news. It's not all war and peacemaking in the rest of the world, but New York artist Bradley Hart is packing his artistic interpretations into bubble wraps. It's a technique he's mastered over the past 4 years. Now, it's a top secret one, though. It involves custom-made computer algorithms, syringes, homemade tools, and, of course, his passion. He says the idea came after an encounter with an overzealous security guard and, of course, leftover bubble wrap.
The idea originally to use bubble wrap in art came from an experience with a bunch of overzealous security guards, as well as a leftover roll of bubble wrap that from my first solo exhibition in 2009 in Manhattan. I'm sitting there and I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, oh my God, that's it. And I know that it's an idea that wasn't 100% new, to play with the idea of the cultural trope on whether or not one should touch art, because that's what the art began at. They didn't start as paintings or the sculptures they're moving into. It actually began as a sculpture of just a roll of bubble wrap and playing with the idea that should you touch the art or not. So what you're actually seeing is a representation of something in a digital form. So for me, I like bringing high tech back down to low tech. So hence, it's all very labor, it's done by hand. I inject computer technology in our times.
It does sound a bit confusing, doesn't it? Well, let's move over to the Philippines now. Basketball players who participated in a charity marathon game in Manila have broken the world record for the longest game of basketball after shooting hoops non-stop. Wait for it, for 5 days. Our 2 teams, each with 12 players, set the new record at 120 hours, 1 minute and 7 seconds by playing under strict conditions since Monday, March the 24th. They beat the previous record of 112 hours and 13 seconds, which was held by the Missouri Athletics Club in the United States.
After months of revelations of spying by the U.S. National Security Agency, a lawsuit has been filed in federal court to stop some of these practices. Here's Republican Senator Rand Paul.
The players endured 5 days of intense physical and mental challenges, but after the final whistle was blown, marathon player Justo Quito said the pain was worth it. We went through so much, the hardships, the stress, the pain and the emotional strain mixing together. But when we saw the clock reaching 120 hours, the pain vanished. We were so happy. Among the 24 players were 3 past record holders from the Missouri Athletics Club who joined the record attempt for charitable reasons.
I researched a little bit about what was going on with Typhoon Yolanda and the tragedies, and I learned that there were families and children, thousands and thousands left homeless. I had experience in the world record basketball game. I knew it was tough, but I also knew this was a great cause. So to me, this one was about, it was about kids having needs.
A Guinness World Records educator awarded the title to the teams in Manila after evaluating the extensive footage and documents when they exceeded the 112-hour mark early morning on Saturday.
I can therefore confirm that the time achieved is 120 hours, 1 minute, 7 seconds.
Yeah!
It's a new Guinness World Record time.
Mabuhay ang Pilipinas!
Part of the aim of the basketball marathon was to raise funds through crowdsourcing for a charitable organization responsible for building houses for the victims of Typhoon Haiyan in the central Philippines. Organizers estimated at least 3 million pesos, that's about $67,000 worth of pledges and support had been raised by this event.
120 hours, 1 minute and 7 seconds. I'd be exhausted. But anything right for a game that you love? And that's how we end the world today. Thanks for watching. I am Amarachi Ubani. Stay tuned in just a few minutes. It's